Mount Rainier is one of the premier mountains in the United States and is a commanding force that can be seen from all over western Washington on a clear day. It's a park I have wanted to visit for years, and I can honestly say that it lived up to expectations, with some of the most stunning views, waterfalls, and hikes I've experienced in a long time. The national park encompasses the mountain and the 200,000 acres of natural beauty that surround it. Here is all the information on my one day in Mount Rainier National Park, and let me know what your favorite spot is in the comments. The national park is located about 2 hours and 15 minutes from Seattle. It's an easy drive and it has some beautiful views of the mountain as you make your way south. I was actually planning on doing something else in Seattle, but it was so clear the day I was there that I had to go down to Mount Rainier. Eventually, I made it to the park entrance around 9 a.m. and began my time at Mount Rainier National Park. Also, there are 3 distinct sections for this park, and I just spent my time in the Paradise section. My first stop was the viewpoint and parking area right after Couts Creek.
Made it into the park. We're heading to the Paradise Visitor Center, but I figured there's a viewpoint sign. I should probably stop here first.
This is a short 3 to 5 minute walk to the viewpoint, and it's relatively covered, but it's still a beautiful introduction to the park.
I'm feeling pretty excited about today. That was a tiny view and it was already amazing. Plus it's supposed to be clear all day long.
My plan was to head all the way to the Paradise Visitor Center in order to get a parking spot before the park filled up, but there's so many amazing sights to see here that I kept pulling off. The first of these was Christine Falls, and I pulled off before the bridge, and then I went past the bridge and walked down to the falls viewpoint. You don't want to miss this viewpoint. It was one of my favorite views in the park.
Tell me that's not one of the coolest waterfall views you've seen. That bridge right above it. Wow.
I love photographing waterfalls and bridges, so this view was basically as good as it gets for me. Heading on, I didn't stop again till the Paradise Visitor Center, and this ended up being the right call. The views from the scenic road on the way up are worth the price of admission just by themselves.
I'm glad I rushed up here. This is a Monday and it is completely full basically. The trail we're heading out on is right there.
Before starting the trail, be sure to head into the visitor center, ask any questions, and pick up a map. Unfortunately, many of the exhibits were still closed when I was there.
Got some lunch before heading out on the Skyline Trail, which should be amazing today. I was actually planning on doing some other stuff in the Seattle area, but when I saw Rainier was going to be clear, I had to come down here, and I am so glad that I did.
I keep talking about how clear it is because the mountain's over 14,000 feet and it has its own weather system, often with the top covered in clouds.
We're here, we're going to head out to Panorama Point, and then I think we're going to cut it off at the Golden Gate Trail and come back.
The trail started out right with a great John Muir quote before you climb the stairs and start the hike. Most of the video focuses on this hike as it's often voted one of the best hikes in the entire national park system. Do note that it is a tough trail though, with over 1,700 feet of elevation gain and about 6 miles round trip.
The grade on this hike is incredibly steep. I've gone up like 300 feet in like a quarter of a mile. It's paved, but it's very steep.
Basically prepare to be going uphill the entire way to Panorama Point and for there to not really be any shade on the entire trail.
Look at how tiny the people are over here in the shadow of that massive mountain. Man, the views on this trail are so cool. This may be one of the best hikes I've done so far in a national park.
This trail had 2 main things going for it when I was there, the first being that the mountain was so clear and easy to see, and the second being that it was fall, so there was many different bushes and other plants that had some fall colors going. It didn't have any of the traditional fall trees, but you'll see later in the video that there's still some amazing fall colors.
There's the trail continuing to head up. I keep taking the same photo over and over again, but I mean, can you blame me? It's like every bend of this trail is better.
While the trail is uphill the entire way, it's really well maintained and easy to travel even though it's steep.
Now we got views that way and that way. You can see how steep this is. The parking lot is like way down in that valley. We haven't even reached the top of the trail yet. Wow, you guys, look at that waterfall falling off Mount Rainier. Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
I was shocked when I got here as I had never even seen a picture of this waterfall on Mount Rainier.
You guys, there's literally a waterfall at the base of Mount Rainier. I can't get over this place.
When I talked to the rangers earlier in the day, they told me that this was a really low snow year for Mount Rainier. Normally from here you'd be able to see a couple different glaciers, but they were relatively small when I was there.
One last push up to Panorama Point.
Here the trail continues to gain elevation on a series of rock and wooden steps with great views back the way you came down into the valley. You can even see the bridge that you went across to get over the creek way down below you.
Here's the split to head up to Camp Muir, which is the starting point kind of for the push up to the summit. This is the first time the trail has turned away from the mountain. Now it's behind us as we head up to the point. We're just continuing to go up. I think Panorama Point is up there. But we have come a long way from the parking lot, so do note that if you're doing this trail. There it is, Panorama Point. We're almost there. Made it to Panorama Point.
Panorama Point sits at 6,800 feet of elevation, and on a clear day you can see dozens of mountains, including Mount Hood and Mount St. Helens way out in the distance.
We still got a little bit more elevation on this trail before we can start heading down. We're going from the skyline to the high skyline. Also, there is a toilet up here if you need it.
I thought this was the high point of the trail, but the high point is actually a small hill behind this spot. Of course, the views as you make your way up are incredible, and there is actually another waterfall to the right and below the summit.
Made it to the trail high point and can finally start the path back down.
The path back down is steep and rocky, but it's nice to be going downhill. For many people though, a hiking pole would probably help here.
There's Panorama Point over there, and we are all the way over here.
I recommend doing this trail clockwise as you can see Mount Rainier the entire way up. On the way down it is still visible, but it does go behind the mountains a little bit. When I talked to the ranger before starting the hike, they told me that if I wanted to cut it a little bit shorter, I could take the Golden Gate Trail down. This cuts off about a mile from the hike, and since I wanted to explore a lot more of the park, I decided to do this. It ended up being a steep but beautiful trail, and let me know how the rest of the Skyline Trail is if you do it and if there was anything that I missed. This is also where I saw some of the bushes that had that fall color with a lot of reds and oranges. It was pretty incredible, and this video will never do justice to how beautiful it was.
I can't get over how amazing these colors are. Man, it's so beautiful.
This part of the trail follows a creek, and there's a few tiny waterfalls as you make your way down. It's one of those places where you're going to want to take your time and just enjoy the end of the trail.
Alright, we're just about done with the hike. That was one of the top 5 best hikes I've probably ever done. Just incredible views with the fall, with the mountain, and then we're ending at the waterfall, which is also an incredible view. As we get back to this split, we're coming back to where the Skyline Trail would have taken us if we didn't split off on the Golden Gate Trail. The waterfall goes right under this bridge. That's the viewing area right there.
After crossing over the bridge, there's a short steep path that'll take you down to the viewing platform for Myrtle Falls. Note that this is one of the most iconic views in the park, and it's always busy. After seeing it though, I understand what all the fuss is about. This 75-foot waterfall cascades into the gorge below with amazing views of Mount Rainier behind it. If you don't want to do the entire Skyline Trail, you can just hike to the waterfall, which is about a half mile from the parking lot. There's a ton of people doing this short hike, so you'll pass a lot of them as you make your way back. For me, I just headed back to my car so I could explore a few more spots in Mount Rainier before ending the day. I do want to stress again that if it's a clear day, be sure to get here early. This was a weekday and people were basically parking along the road up to a mile away. The Stevens Canyon Road through the park was already closed for the winter, so the furthest I could drive was Reflection Lake, which was my next stop.
For some reason they have the entire lakeside closed off with these ropes, so you can't even get close to the water to take a picture, which is a little bit of a bummer, but it's still a really beautiful area and there's lots of people that are going over the ropes.
This would be a great place for photography if you could get closer to the water, but I didn't stay for very long.
This is just another random pullout. Look at that view.
If it's clear, just driving the scenic view is worth the trip by itself.
There's a waterfall down there as well, which is our next stop.
From there is about a 7-minute drive down to the parking area for Narada Falls.
There's the viewing area way down there.
You can just take it in from the parking area, but I highly recommend you hike down.
From here to the falls viewpoint, it's about 1/10 of a mile. It's downhill on the way down, uphill on the way back. You can start to see it coming through the trees. I think it's gonna be pretty impressive. Well, that was worth the 1/10 of a mile trail. Look, there's even a rainbow at the base.
This waterfall is one of the most beautiful I've seen in a long time. I love how wide it is with multiple different streams all cascading over the rocks below. Plus, it's about 165 feet tall and the rainbow at the base was hard to beat.
That was one of the most beautiful waterfalls I've ever seen. Mount Rainier is moving up my list of national parks, that's for sure.
As I made my way towards the exit of the park, I stopped one more time at Christine Falls as I loved it so much the first time.
That waterfall on the bridge is so epic, and that's one of like 5 epic waterfalls we've seen today.
My last spot before heading out was to explore the Longmire area of the park. Here you can visit the Longmire Museum, which was the original park headquarters from the early 1900s and which is now a small museum. Inside they have exhibits on the history, wildlife, and even the glaciers. There's a few trails in this area as well across the street from the parking lot.
After exploring the Longmire Museum, I'm heading out on my last trail of the day, the Trail of the Shadows, and it's about 3/4 of a mile.
This is a great family-friendly trail with lots of good views and history plaques.
Beautiful little meadow right at the start of the trail. They said it's called the Longmire Meadow. Plus, it has a great view of Mount Rainier.
This area is famous for the dozens of different hot springs that are found throughout it. James Longmire was the one who originally found them and even created the Longmire Springs Hotel in the 1890s. People would come from all over to soak in the pools, and even though the hotel is no longer there, you can learn about it on the different historic plaques. As you continue around, you'll see the Longmire Cabin. This cabin was built by James' son in 1888. It's still standing and you can actually go inside and explore it. It's really cool to be able to see a piece of history like this in the park.
This is a great family-friendly trail with basically no incline, lots of history, plaques to read. Really cool little spot. Great addition to the park, but obviously those other trails are better.
As you leave the cabin, you'll see another example of the historic hot springs that were in the area. Now it just has an orange, rusty water running from it, but it's still interesting to see.
Even though this trail doesn't have much incline, it's unfortunately not ADA. It has some areas with lots of roots, but some cool boardwalk areas as well.
The last half mile of this trail goes along the backside of the meadow and is shaded the entire way. There's not as much history to explore here, but it is a beautiful area. You can take this trail clockwise or counterclockwise, but I did it counterclockwise in this video. Eventually you'll round a bend and see the road in front of you, and then you'll parallel the road back to the start of the trail.
That's it for my day in Mount Rainier National Park. Honestly, this is probably one of my favorite national parks now. It was incredible, and I've only explored a small section. There's the sunrise section, and I think there's one other section. Leave your favorite spots in the comments for when I come back. Thanks again for following along with me. We'll see you on the next video.